Hello, my name is Alencia Lamb, and this is my presentation for MKT532, or Consumer Behavior, for Module 4, titled Decision Theory and Consumer Decision Making Process. So the topics that were discussed in this module are as follows: decision theories such as normative, utility, and prospect, cognitive biases, and the decision-making process. Decision theory is a theory that is concerned with the reasoning regarding a person's choices. It is the notion that what a person chooses to do is dependent on their beliefs, desires, and/or values. One of the main aspects of decision theory is attitude coherence, as this is the stability of beliefs, desires, and values. Some examples of decision theory are normative decision theory, expected utility theory, and prospect theory. Normative decision theory entails the criteria in a person's preference attitude and how it should satisfy generic circumstances. It focuses on how consumers maximize their expected utility to make their decisions. It involves a ranking system of options for the most satisfaction. However, there is little rationality in this theory, which can unfortunately lead to uncertainty. The next decision theory is expected utility theory. Expected utility theory, or orthodox normative decision theory, occurs when people are placed in a situation of uncertainty and prefer to approach the option that has the greatest value or outcome. Unlike normative decision theory, expected utility theory uses rationality, which leads to more certainty. The last decision theory mentioned will be prospect theory. Prospect theory is when consumers make irrational or inconsistent decisions during times of uncertainty. The four main elements of prospect theory are reference dependence, loss aversion, diminishing sensitivity, and probability weighing. Typically, consumers focus more on the loss than the gain, which is what causes the uncertainty and irrationality in their decision making. A few other decision theories are causal decision theory, evidential decision theory, and functional decision theory. So when it comes to the decision making in consumers, there are many factors that come into play. For example, cognitive biases. Some common types of cognitive biases are anchoring bias, extension neglect, truth judgment, and cognitive dissonance. Some of the ways that marketers can combat cognitive biases is by derailing loss aversion, understanding status quo bias, suggesting anchors for consumers instead of allowing them to find them themselves, helping to mold their framework, crafting and developing their own in-group bias, and using social proof to help with brand conformity. And understanding how consumers make their decisions, marketers first have to look at the steps that lead to them making the decisions that they made. The decision-making process is as follows: need recognition, where consumers determine if whatever they're looking for serves a purpose or if it satisfies a need. Information search, where you look at internal and external influences. Alternative evaluations, where you look at alternatives that have similar characteristics. The purchase itself, and post-purchase evaluation, where consumers determine if they have buyer's remorse or buyer satisfaction. Marketers can use the principles of decision theory to better understand and predict consumer choices by looking at popular trends that consumers tend to follow. And by looking into trends for each of the steps of consumer purchases, marketers are able to see in which direction consumers base their decisions on and can move accordingly. For example, last year, many consumers considered summer 2024 to be a brat summer, where loud neon green was the color of choice. Bright red was also a very much so popular color for all of 2024. As the fall months started to near and summer was ending, the neon green and bright red trend began to falter, and many consumers began to resort to lighter, more pastel colors. And with the push of influencers and content creators, marketers could see that consumers were following this trend and began to make items in colors such as butter yellow. Because marketers could see that last summer was a very vibrant summer, they could predict that consumers want a more muted fall and winter color and reacted accordingly. Marketers can also try to understand their target audience's preferences by segmenting their target audience. For example, for marketers trying to understand why millennial gray is popular, they first have to look at their target audience, which would be millennials. And they can try to look into why a generation that was born into such bright and vibrant colors now gravitate more so towards muted and neutral colors. From here, they can make or market products that seem to fit the current aesthetic and potentially do consumer surveys to understand the appeal. Again, my name is Alentia Lamb, and this is my summary for MKT532 Module 4.